She's nothing but a glorified maid with no education, Justin said, his voice dripping with disdain. My blood boiled instantly. I glanced around the dinner table, shocked by the cold words that shattered the air. Justin's parents, Evelyn and Richard, exchanged uneasy glances. They didn't try to hide their discomfort. "Justin, that's enough," Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly. "Well, it's the truth, Mom," he replied, shrugging as if it was the most natural statement in the world. "Eva, you know I'm just being honest." I looked at him, my mind racing. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. His charming smile and tender gestures now seemed like a cruel facade. "Is this really what you think of me?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "Come on, Eva, let's not make a scene. I'm sure they want to know who they're dealing with." I couldn't believe his audacity. After everything. I stopped myself, afraid my voice would crack. My heart pounded as I tried to maintain composure. I glanced at Evelyn and Richard, looking for any sign of support. Evelyn's eyes held regret, while Richard stared at his plate, seemingly lost for words. Justin's smirk was the final straw. I pushed back my chair and stood up, my hands trembling. "Excuse me," I muttered, heading towards the front door. I needed fresh air. Needed to think. "Eva, wait," Evelyn called after me. I paused, feeling her gentle hand on my shoulder. "I don't know what Justin was thinking. Please, don't judge us by his words. He can be difficult." I looked at her, her eyes sincere. "He's never talked to me like that before," I said. I don't know what to think." "Give it time, dear," she said softly. "These things have a way of sorting themselves out." I nodded weakly and stepped outside, the cool evening air hitting my face. I never imagined that the man I moved in with would turn out to be so condescending. His words echoed in my mind, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. Justin soon joined me on the porch, pretending everything was fine. "You didn't have to leave," he said casually, as if dismissing the whole affair. "I can't believe you said that," I replied, my voice quivering with suppressed anger. "Do you really think so little of me?" "Eva, you need to understand something," he said, his tone shifting to one of mild irritation. "My parents needed to know about your background. There's nothing wrong with being honest." "I need some time alone," I said, cutting him off. I couldn't stand to hear any more. He raised his hands defensively. "Fine, but don't be dramatic." I watched him walk back inside, the door closing softly behind him. I felt the weight of his words pressing down on me. This wasn't the first time I had felt his condescending attitude, but it had never been so blatant. I thought about my mother, Sharon, waiting at home for me. Her frail condition and need for constant care already wore heavily on my spirit. Justin's words cut deeper than he knew, hitting the raw nerves of my insecurities and fears. I thought I had found a partner, someone to build a life with, but tonight's events tore down that illusion. As I stood on the porch, the night air cooling my heated skin, I resolved not to let this define me. No matter how charming or successful Justin was, I had my dignity. I glanced back at the house one last time. This would not be the end, but a beginning. One way or another, I would find a way through this. "I'm out there saving lives while you flounder in mediocrity," Justin snarled as he tossed his keys on the kitchen counter. The sound of metal clanging echoed through the apartment, emphasizing his words. I froze, the dishcloth in my hand halfway to the sink. "Excuse me?" "You heard me, Eva," he said, rolling his eyes. "Do you know how tiring it is to come home to this mess after a 12-hour shift?" I glanced around the spotless kitchen. Nothing was out of place. "What mess?" I asked, exasperated. He stalked toward me, pointing a finger in my face. "Your life is a mess. Look at you, a high school dropout, waiting tables and cleaning houses. Do you think that's impressive?" My heart pounded as his words sank in. The man I fell in love with was nowhere to be seen. "I contribute to this household, too," I managed to say, my voice trembling with anger. Justin scoffed. "Barely. I cover most of the bills. What you make is peanuts." I clenched my fists, feeling the anger build up inside me, but I decided to stay calm. "I'm doing the best I can, Justin, and I'm also caring for my mom. That's not nothing." He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "Always your mother. You're drowning in mediocrity, and you drag me down with you." I turned away, blinking back tears. His words were like knives, cutting deep. I could hear him behind me, the sound of his heavy breathing filling the room. "You know what?" I said. refusing to let him see me break down. Maybe you'd be happier if I wasn't here. Maybe I would, he spat out. Or maybe you could actually try to better yourself. I planted my feet firmly on the ground, turning back to face him. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I once adored. I thought we were partners, I said quietly. But you see me as a burden. Eva, open your eyes, he snapped. Partners? Mutual respect? That's fantasy. Welcome to reality. The sting of his words left a bitter taste in my mouth. I need some air, I said, brushing past him to the front door. I could feel his eyes burning into my back but didn't turn around. Out on the street, the cool night air felt like freedom. I tried to piece together how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The charming, supportive man I met through the dating app was now nothing more than a controlling tyrant. As I walked, my mind drifted to the early days of our relationship, the sweet text messages, the late-night talks, and the promises that now felt hollow. I needed to talk to Sharon. The next afternoon, during one of my rare breaks, I visited her at the old family home. She lay on the couch, looking frail but cheerful. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to mask my stress with a smile. "Hey, sweetheart," she replied, patting the space beside her. I sat down, and she immediately noticed something was off. "Tell me what's wrong," she said. I sighed, leaning my head back against the couch. "It's Justin, Mom. He's changed, or maybe I'm just now seeing the real him." She frowned, her eyes filled with concern. "What happened?" "The way he talks to me," I began, pausing to find the right words without breaking down. "He treats me like I'm less than him, like I'm nothing." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're not nothing, Eva. You are strong, stronger than you know." Her words brought tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away. "Thanks, Mom. I needed that." We sat there in shared silence, her hand in mine. In that moment, I realized that whatever the future held, I had to be strong, for myself and for her. I would not let Justin's cruelty destroy my spirit. "Stop being so useless and get this house in order," Justin barked as he slammed the door behind him. The force of it sent a shiver through the apartment, like an earthquake had struck. Exhaustion turned into raw, seething anger inside me. I gripped the broom tighter, forcing myself not to snap. "I've been cleaning all day, and I still have to go take care of Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm as possible. He rolled his eyes. "Always an excuse with you, Eva. You think this is hard? Try doing what I do for even a day." "I'm doing my best," I replied, my voice shaking. "Maybe if you could help once in a while." "Help?" Justin cut me off, laughing bitterly. "I'm a surgeon. My time is worth 10 times what yours is. You should be grateful I even talked to you." My fists clenched so tightly around the broom that my knuckles turned white. I turned my back to him, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Taking a deep breath, I began sweeping furiously, each stroke a silent rebellion. "You know, my colleagues laugh at me," he sneered. "They can't believe I'm stuck with someone like you." His words stung like 1,000 paper cuts. "Then why don't you just leave?" I muttered under my breath, but loud enough for him to hear. He stormed over, yanking the broom from my hands and tossing it aside. "Because, Eva, you need me. You need my money, my status. Without me, you're nothing." I looked up at him, my defiance bubbling to the surface. "I don't need you, Justin. I won't be treated like garbage just because you have a fancy title." He stepped closer, invading my space, his eyes narrowing. "Without me, you'd be on the streets. Remember that next time you think about mouthing off." The ringing of my phone interrupted the tension. I grabbed it from the counter and saw my mother's number. Relief washed over me, an escape from this prison, albeit temporary. "I have to go," I said, brushing past Justin. "My mom needs me." "Just get out," he hissed, waving me off. Barely worth my time. I walked out the door, his words echoing behind me like a dark cloud. The drive to my mother's was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. How had things turned so sour so quickly? When I arrived at my mother's house, Sharon was struggling to reach something from the top shelf in the kitchen. "Hey, Mom," I said, rushing to help her. "You should have called me." "Thanks, sweetheart," she said, her smile warm but tinged with fatigue. I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just busy. How are you feeling today?" She sat down at the kitchen table, cradling a cup of tea. "I'm okay, but you seem upset. What happened?" I opened my mouth to speak, but the words choked in my throat. "It's just Justin," I managed to say. "He's being impossible again." her eyes filled with worry. "Eva, you don't have to put up with that. You deserve better." "I know, Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But it's complicated. I need to figure out how to handle this." Later that night, I found myself back at the apartment, dreading the confrontation that awaited me. Justin was in bed, his back turned to me, clearly uninterested in any kind of reconciliation. I lay down beside him, staring at the ceiling. My mind was made up. I couldn't continue like this. I needed to find out who he really was. If there were secrets, I would uncover them, and then I would make him pay for every degrading word, every humiliating moment. My resolve hardened, fueling a sense of determination I didn't know I had. I would gather the evidence, plan my move, and expose the man who thought he could treat people like disposable objects. Justin was about to learn that even someone floundering in mediocrity could fight back. And win. "This isn't just him being mean. This is criminal," I whispered to myself, staring at Justin's laptop screen. The encrypted emails I had decrypted slowly revealed a web of illegal activities that made my skin crawl. I quickly photographed the damning emails with my phone, my hands shaking. I had found everything from organ trafficking deals to bribery transactions. The charming surgeon was nothing more than a dangerous criminal. The front door opened and my heart skipped a beat. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it back into its hiding place just as Justin walked into the room. "Eva," he called out, his voice unusually cheerful. "What's for dinner?" "I ordered takeout," I said, forcing a smile, trying to hide the adrenaline coursing through me. He looked at me suspiciously. "Why are you acting so weird?" "Weird," I echoed, my voice steady. "I'm just tired, Justin. It's been a long day." He eyed me for a moment before shrugging. "Whatever. Make sure you set the table." As I set the table, my mind raced. What would my next move be? But for now, I had to play it cool. I couldn't let him suspect a thing. Later that week, as Justin continued his usual night shifts, I became more meticulous in gathering evidence. I copied files, took photos of documents, and even recorded some of our conversations. The more I uncovered, the more revolted I felt. During one of our dinners, Justin dropped another bomb. "I've invited my parents over this weekend," he said casually between bites. "We'll have a little family gathering. You can show my mother how useful you can be by preparing everything." I bit back the resentful reply that bubbled up. "Sure, Justin, I'll take care of it." As the weekend approached, I prepared meticulously. But not just for the gathering. It was time to turn the tables. When his parents arrived, I greeted them warmly, my heart pounding with anticipation. Evelyn smiled and embraced me, but Richard's stern face showed he wasn't convinced by the domestic facade. The dinner conversation started light, filled with polite chit-chat. I served the meal, trying to time everything perfectly. My pulse quickened as the conversation shifted. "Justin, how's work been lately?" Richard asked, his tone neutral. "Busy as always, Dad," Justin replied, beaming with pride. "Saving lives every day." I almost choked on my drink. The hypocrisy was unbearable, but I held my tongue. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. As the evening wore on, Justin's arrogance grew. Finally, he made a comment that made my blood boil. "You know," he said, glancing at me, "it's hard to balance such an important career with someone who barely contributes." That was it. I couldn't take any more. "Actually, Justin," I said, my voice steady, "I think it's time your parents knew the whole truth." Evelyn looked alarmed, and Richard's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about, Eva?" Justin asked, his voice low and threatening. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "I found these on your laptop. Care to explain?" His face paled as the images of the incriminating emails flashed on the screen. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth, while Richard's face turned red with fury. "What is this, Justin?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. Justin stammered, trying to come up with a lie, but the evidence was overwhelming. "It's not what it looks like," he pleaded. But the room had already turned against him. Richard stood up, his face stern. "Is this true, Justin? Have you been involved in illegal activities?" Justin's silence spoke volumes. Evelyn burst into tears, and Richard's eyes filled with disappointed anger. How could you? The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. I felt a surge of vindication, knowing that the truth was finally out in the open. Justin's world was about to crumble, and I was ready for the fallout. "You think your title gives you power over me? Over anyone?" I stated, my calm voice slicing through the tension-filled room like a knife. Justin's parents were still digesting the images on my phone. Evelyn's tear-streaked face looked shattered, while Richard appeared as if he might burst from anger. But none of that mattered now. "Eva, you better watch your mouth," Justin snarled, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and rage. "Enough is enough. Time to turn the tables," I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "You've treated me like dirt for too long, and now everyone will see who you really are." Justin lunged towards me, but Richard stepped in. "You stay right where you are," he bellowed, his face inches from Justin's. "Have you lost your mind, son?" "Dad, it's not what it looks like," Justin tried to explain, his voice lacking the confidence it usually held. He looked cornered like a trapped animal. Evelyn sobbed quietly, her body shaking. "Justin, how could you? We raised you better than this." Justin's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "Eva, get out, now," he growled, trying to regain control. "No," I replied firmly. "I'm not leaving. You are the one who will face the consequences." Richard turned to me, his voice softer but firm. "Eva, I'm sorry for what you've been through, but we need to get to the bottom of this." I nodded, taking a step back to let the conversation unfold. Justin's face looked strained, the facade of the charming doctor cracking at the edges. "Justin, you must come clean," Richard insisted, his stern judicial tone leaving no room for debate. "You don't understand, Dad," Justin said, floundering. "I did it to help people. These organ trades saved lives." Evelyn gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Justin, that's illegal. You risked everything, everyone, for money?" Justin's face flushed with a mix of anger and shame. "It's not just about the money, Mom. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Evelyn cried out. "This is criminal." The room grew silent for a moment, the weight of what had been said hanging in the air like a dark storm cloud. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Finally, Justin was facing the consequences for his actions. Richard shook his head, looking his son dead in the eye. "You need to turn yourself in. It's the only way to atone for what you've done." Justin's face turned pale, and he took a step back. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Richard said, his voice firm. "If you don't, I will." Justin's eyes widened in desperation. He turned to me, his expression a mix of hatred and pleading. "Eva, please, don't do this." I held my ground, meeting his gaze with unyielding resolve. "This isn't about revenge anymore, Justin. This is about right and wrong." Evelyn stood and placed a hand on Justin's arm, tears streaming down her face. "Justin, we love you, but you must take responsibility for your actions." "Traitor," Justin's eyes screamed at me, but his lips remained pressed in a thin line. He turned towards his father, defeated. "Fine, if that's what it takes." Richard pulled out his phone and dialed quickly, each number a final nail in the coffin of Justin's charade. "I'm calling our attorney. We're going to sort this out legally." As Richard's voice echoed through the room, making arrangements, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. This was just the beginning, but at least the truth was out. I watched as Justin stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. The man who had once controlled me was now facing the collapse of everything he held dear. For once, I felt hope for justice, for my mother, and for myself. My future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would not be a victim any longer. "Is this true, Justin? Have you been trading lives for money?" Evelyn's voice trembled with disbelief as she clutched her son's arm. The dining room felt like a courtroom. Justin stood there, cornered and pale, his eyes cast downward. "Mom, he stammered, searching for words that wouldn't come. The truth finally out in the open, I thought, feeling a surge of vindication. "It's all true," I stated, my voice clear. "Justin's been involved in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. I have all the evidence." Richard hung up the phone. "The attorney is on his way. Until then, Justin, you need to start explaining yourself." Justin flinched. "Dad, it's more complicated than you think. I didn't have a choice." "Choice? You always have a choice," Richard fired back, "and you chose crime." Evelyn sobbed quietly, holding her forehead. "This can't be happening. How could you do this to your patients, to us?" Justin clenched his fists, his facade of control entirely shattered. "It wasn't just for money," he said, his voice hollow. "Some of these people were desperate. Lives were saved." "And how many lives were ruined?" I retorted, locking eyes with him. "You think your good intentions justify breaking the law? Exploiting people?" Richard raised a hand. Eva's right. Whatever your reasoning, it doesn't excuse this. Justin's gaze shifted around the room, looking for an ally, but finding none. Dad, Mom, please, I can make this right. Just give me a chance. No, Justin, Richard said quietly. You must take responsibility for this. Our family name is at stake, and more importantly, you need to atone for your actions. A tense silence filled the room as Justin seemed to crumple under the weight of his father's words. It was strange seeing this once powerful man now cornered and vulnerable. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Richard glanced at me, nodding for confirmation. That must be the attorney. I opened the door to find not just the family attorney, but also a police officer standing beside him. Wordlessly, I stepped back to let them in. Richard, the attorney said, shaking hands and nodding solemnly at Evelyn. I've briefed the officer about the situation. Justin's eyes widened in panic. Dad, you called the police? I had to, Richard said firmly, though his voice softened slightly. It's the right thing to do. The officer stepped forward. Justin Parker, you're under arrest for your involvement in illegal organ trafficking and bribery. You have the right to remain silent. Justin looked at his parents one last time, desperation in his eyes. Please, help me. Evelyn's tears flowed freely, but she said nothing. Richard sighed deeply. We'll get you a lawyer, Justin, but you must face the consequences. As the officer pulled out the handcuffs, Justin didn't resist. His eyes found mine, pleading silently, but I felt no pity. This was justice. I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now, the world knows who you really are, I said quietly, feeling the weight of the last few months lift off my shoulders. As they led Justin away, Evelyn collapsed into Richard's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He held her, his face a mix of heartbreak and resolve. You did the right thing, Richard said, looking at me. No one should have to live in fear or be treated like that. Thank you for your courage. I nodded, unable to form words. Justice was messy, and hearts were broken, but it was a necessary step. I had exposed the truth, and in doing so had freed myself from Justin's cruel grip. Outside, as the police car pulled away, I watched with a strange sense of peace. Justin had been powerful and ruthless, but now he was simply a man facing the consequences of his actions. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. The media frenzy hit like a hurricane the day after Justin's arrest. Reporters swarmed our apartment building, their cameras flashing as they peppered me with questions. Eva, how long did you know? What did you uncover? How do you feel now that it's all out in the open? I'm done being your victim, Justin. Now the world knows who you really are, I had said, and it was now more true than ever. As I looked at the chaos around me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Justice would be served, even if it was a messy process. A police officer managed to clear a path for me. Eva Hall, Detective Mills would like to speak with you. Thank you, I replied, following the officer to an unmarked car parked discreetly around the corner. Detective Sarah Mills was waiting inside, her expression unreadable. She motioned for me to sit. Eva, I need to hear everything from the beginning. What you found, how you found it, all of it. I took a seat, my heart still pounding from the chaos outside. I found Justin's emails, I began. He'd been encrypting messages about illegal organ trades and bribes. I took photos of everything. Detective Mills nodded. We've reviewed the evidence you provided and begun our investigation. Thanks to you, we're already making progress on tracking down his accomplices. A sense of relief washed over me. What happens now? Now we gather more evidence and prepare the case against him. It's going to be a long process, Eva. Are you ready for that? I took a deep breath. Yes, I'm ready. I've come this far. I won't back down now. Detective Mills smiled faintly. Good. You've done an incredible thing, Eva. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did. I nodded, determined. Thank you, Detective. We spent the next few hours going over the details, piece by piece. It was exhausting, reliving each painful discovery, but I knew it was necessary. By the time we finished, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the chaotic scene outside. Finally, outside, I glanced at the dispersing crowd of reporters, realizing it was time to reclaim my life. I walked back to our apartment, every step solidifying my resolve. That evening, I called my mom. Hey, Mom, it's over. Justin's been arrested. Her relief was palpable. I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've been so strong. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, my voice breaking a little. It's been hard, but it was worth it. Come home, sweetheart, she replied, her voice warm. We can start over together. I'll be there soon, Mom. As I packed up my belongings, the emptiness of the apartment struck me. This place, once filled with promise and love, now held only bitter memories and broken dreams. I had to leave it all behind to truly move forward. The next morning, I woke up early, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. I looked around the apartment one last time before stepping out the door with my bags. Outside, the air was crisp, and the world seemed strangely quiet, without the buzz of media frenzy. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm done being your victim, Justin, I whispered to myself as I walked to my car. Now, it's time to live my life. As I drove away, the city skyline faded into the distance, along with the chaos that had consumed my life for so long. There was a long road ahead, full of uncertainty and challenges, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it. I arrived at my mom's place, a sense of peace filling me as she welcomed me with open arms. I hugged her tightly, knowing that together we could rebuild our lives. This was just the beginning. Justice had been served, and now it was time to find a new path, one filled with hope, strength, and a future I could finally control. Freedom tastes a little bittersweet, but it's mine, I thought, standing in the doorway of my mother's house. A wave of calm washed over me, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Eva, come inside, Mom called, her voice warm and comforting. Dinner's almost ready. Walking into the kitchen, I was struck by how different this felt compared to the cold, tense atmosphere of the apartment I had shared with Justin. Here, everything smelled of home, of safety and love. How are you holding up? Mom asked, setting a pot of soup on the table. Better, I said, helping her set the table. It's strange, but I feel like I can breathe again. She smiled, wrapping me in a hug. We'll get through this together. I felt a sudden swell of gratitude for her support. Thanks, Mom, for everything. Over the next few weeks, life began to take on a new rhythm. I found part-time work at a local cafe, much less stressful than the multiple jobs I juggled before. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to care for Mom. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Evelyn. Eva, I wanted to apologize for everything. We had no idea what Justin was capable of. Thank you, Evelyn, I replied, surprised by her call. I'm just glad the truth is finally out. We'd like to help if you'll let us, she continued. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need. I hesitated. Accepting their help felt complicated, yet I knew it would make things easier. I appreciate it. Let's take it one step at a time. Days turned into weeks, and I visited Justin's parents occasionally. Despite everything, they offered genuine support, wanting to right the wrongs their son had committed. Evelyn even helped care for Mom sometimes, her presence a comfort we hadn't expected. One evening, Richard showed up with a somber expression. Eva, I wanted to tell you that we've arranged a fund for you and Sharon. It's the least we can do. Tears welled up in my eyes. This gesture overwhelmed me. Thank you, Richard. This means more than you know. He nodded, his face reflecting the weight of his own family's crisis. We owe it to you. Despite the challenges, a sense of justice and closure began to fill the void left by Justin's abuse. With each contribution from Evelyn and Richard, our lives became a little less burdened. It was a strange alliance forged out of mutual tragedy and need for forgiveness. One night, as I tucked Mom into bed, she grabbed my hand. I'm so proud of you, Eva. You've done so much for us. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Thanks, Mom. I just want us to be happy. The news covered Justin's court trial extensively. Watching from our living room, I saw him being sentenced. There he was, the man who had tried to tear me down, now paying for his crimes. Freedom indeed tasted bittersweet, but justice was powerful. As days turned into months, I found strength I never knew I had. My job at the cafe became more stable, providing a steady income that allowed me more time with Mom. Her health remained fragile, but our bond grew deeper every day. Evelyn and Richard's continued support transformed from financial help to genuine friendship. We had become unlikely allies in the aftermath of a shared catastrophe. One weekend, as I sat with Mom on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze, she looked at me with a smile. What do you see for your future, Eva? I paused, considering her question. I'm not sure yet, but for now I see us together, happy and free from the past. She nodded, her eyes reflecting pride. That sounds just right to me. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The broken promise from my past had led me to a new beginning, one filled with resilience, determination, and love. And for the first time, I could truly see a brighter future. A future that was mine to build, step by step.